might not see the outcomes, we might see the clues, but when you plant a seed, it's gotta grow before it blooms. Oh.
Aloha, Sustainable Farmer Drew, Garden to Garden, Sacred Herbs and Botanicals. So, real quick, I'll try to be quick. I want to go ahead and talk about identifying plants, particularly wild edible medicinal plants that you're gonna try to find and use. So, you know, the potential to be dangerous, don't get me wrong, but it's highly unlikely if you know what you're doing. So what do I suggest? I suggest, first of all, you find someone who can teach you, who's willing to teach you. And if they're a true teacher, you know what? If you can't afford it or something, they're gonna teach you. They may work something out with you, of course, that's also acceptable. But that would be my first thing. If you can find someone who's teaching it, go to the classes, learn, show interest, and just get out there. And that, you know, that's part of how I started. I just kept asking people who knew, and I'm like, how do you know? And you know, they obviously learned from someone. Anyway, one of the best things you can do for your own self-education is to learn plant families. That would be the first thing, is plant families. You know, there's a whole order to this stuff, you know, in the science world. So you want to start at the families and learn them, because every family comes with specific characteristics that are attributed to the plants. And once you learn to recognize those characteristics, you're really narrowing down a lot of things. Now, of course, there's complications when you get into specific genus and species within families, that some can be toxic, some may not be toxic, and then you know, come down to environmental factors and methods of preparation and things like that could potentially either render it untoxic or safe to eat or whatever, or used for medicine. Even toxic plants are used for medicine as they are. So you just got to know how to do it. With that said, once you start knowing, I would say concentrate on one family at a time. Once you really know that family, you know it's how to identify its leaves, the characteristics of its stems, its leaves, its roots, the time of year it grows, the season it grows in, you know, its flowers, it's everything about it. You want to know everything about that family. You know, even the symbiotic relationship it shares with other species. Like, okay, so is this, it may be a host for something, and you see that's a sign. It can be a sign, but it's not a guaranteed way to identify. So anyway, you want to identify, and you want to know the environment without a doubt. If you doubt, do not try a plant. So get someone who knows it to verify it for you. So after you learn the families, you can go into specific genus in that family and start learning that. You know, you might get carried away and want to do one or two at a time, that's fine. But some families have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of genus within the family, and hundreds and if not thousands of species. So it gets complicated, and you know what, I don't know everything. I really don't. I know very little, maybe a few hundred plants, and that's minuscule in the grand scheme of things, because I'm learning plants all the time. And that's what's exciting about it, is that the potential for medicine is there, but the potential for culture is there, the potential to save the planet is there, the potential for all this stuff is there. We just got to unlock that potential, achieve that potential, and make it happen. So anyway, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I just wanted to make it a point that, because people go out there, and I know people like this, they're told about a plant, and they go and they say that's the plant, and they start harvesting it and using it and making medicine out of it and giving it to people, and you know what? It's the wrong plant. I don't care if it's for the same purpose. The point is, you have the wrong plant, and you shouldn't have the wrong plant, because that's dangerous, and you can easily make that mistake doing it with something else when you think you're doing it right in the first place. So And you know what? I learned that lesson the hard way by choosing the wrong species. And you know what? It wasn't a good outcome. We'll stop it at that. Anyhow, that kind of bothers me, but it doesn't. I just wish that people who are claiming to know plants, know wild edible or medicinal plants, or say they practice medicine, is to know it. Like, don't go saying that stuff because you learned it for a month or 5 months or a year or a week, and you learned it yesterday, and then you think you can go and show people. No, I've been learning some plants for 5 years and I still haven't showed anybody because I'm not comfortable with telling them the wrong information. So I hope that you can do that too. Now, there's a difference between scientific taxonomy and traditional taxonomy. And by that I mean folk taxonomy. In a folk taxonomic scenario, you'll say, oh, there's this, what I call you, cattail, yeah? So you call it cattail. And that's a common name, yeah? So it has characteristics that, let's say, a tribal person will come out here, and then at a certain time of year it produces these spikes, and it has this pollen on top of the spikes, and it looks like a cattail. So they name things based on what they can relate them to in their culture, and that's a folk way of doing things and the way they identify things. Now, I've had people tell me, oh, you're using botanical jargon and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. Why use the Latin name and not a... Okay. You know, the cool thing about using Latin is that I can find this plant right now and say what I say about it, and I can go look it up and know for 100% that I have that plant. Because a common name, someone can tell you this, someone can tell you that, from, you know, Africa or Australia or in Solomon Islands or wherever you are, and it's a different name, but it's the same plant. Now in Latin, that name is the same no matter where you go, and I can communicate with someone halfway across the world talking about the same plant, and I can look up that information that they know about it based on how they described it under those botanical or Latin descriptions. Now, the cool thing is that you can put that folk taxonomy under the botanical or Latin taxonomy, and that's where you can learn the names of the different plants from different parts of the world, and that's a lot of bugs, from these plants under the Latin name. And that's why I think it's important. It's important because it's a universal language, and we all share that language innately, don't get me wrong, because we can say in our own language something, and most people can put things together and understand what you're saying because we all share a universal language, believe it or not, no matter where you're from. And I'm not talking about Latin, I'm talking about human, you know, whatever, epithethic, whatever you call it in the language thing, brain's going brain dead. But anyway, Latin. Now you have, you know, of course there's bastardized Latin, and we have the Greek that goes along with it too. And the Greeks are just as important as the Latin, and you can find out a lot of information from that because the history goes back such a long time. And it's not just the Latin name will give you the etymology of where it comes from, whether it's derived from an Arabic origin or Indian origin or North American, or, you know, something like that. And you learn this secret language of plants, now combined with plant families and knowledge of Latin, because the Latin encrypts the description oftentimes, just like the folk taxonomy does. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so the Latin name literally can translate to how the plant looks. And that, in cumulation with the plant family knowledge, and then you get into the secondary metabolite knowledge of the plants and the uses of the plants, now you're getting into some crazy stuff. Because you can combine folk taxonomy and scientific or Latin taxonomy. So I don't know if you watched my other video. I did a walk around here. And you can see an old... I'm gonna try to zoom in on that. I can't. But anyway, right here, if you can kind of look up, you can see a really old spike. Kind of has a little bit of the pollen left. Yeah. Babaya, I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, I thought I'd point that out. So I'm going over to another plant, and I'm gonna do a video on that for you. And I hope I made it abundantly clear. And I'm not saying anyone's wrong. You can still do folk taxonomy. And I'm gonna do the Latin. And I'm gonna know the folk taxonomy too. And that's part of what I wanna learn. Because within the folk taxonomy, you're getting traditional knowledge. And traditional knowledge is where the importance of plant conservation and the importance of healing comes from. These are things that have worked for thousands of years beyond what the scientific and Latin scope of things can bring us. Yeah? Now, with the advent of technology and science, we can do some powerful things in healing people. And I'm not talking about exploiting plants and bringing them into the doctor's office and shooting them up with some injection. No, no, no. I'm talking about plant medicine. I'm talking about plant conservation. I'm talking about speaking the same language so we can understand without a doubt what we're looking at, how we're using it, and how we can ultimately protect it. And that's the goal. So signing off, Sustainable Farmer Drew, Garden to Gardens, Sacred Herbs and Botanicals. Much love, respect, peace, aloha.
We might not see the outcomes, we might see the clues, but when you plant a seed, it's gotta grow before it blooms. Oh.